Okay, let's see if this all works. Right. Yep, cool. All right, so I can do that. Awesome. Oops, why did I do that? Got it. Yeah, there we go. All right. Yeah, so basically I'm just testing out the live stream functionality for possible future EFT tappings way back in the day. And I think I talked about this briefly on the last EFT live stream. That's basically how the EFT tappings for this channel started. Was they were called intuitive EFT tap and chats. So it would be basically how I've got the intuitive chats, and then I've got the EFT ones. They were actually all one, but they were kind of an hour in length. And yeah, attention spans nowadays is down to a minute. So it gets a little bit harder to keep people's attention for an hour-long chat. And sometimes even with the chats, how it's edited is normally I'm about 30 minutes in before I start getting my stride of what I want to say. So basically what will happen today, this is just merely a testing of the live streaming, because in the past I would go through Zoom and then send it to YouTube, because YouTube didn't have the live functionality back then. So it was basically, all the video quality back then for some of the videos was because of the resolution, trying to whatever downscale it, whatever. It looked like it was basically filmed on a potato. So I'm still using the same webcam, but going directly through YouTube definitely doesn't downgrade the quality. And that said, if I have popped up on your YouTube, whatever, and you're wanting to join in, and I do have a list of EFT tapping ideas that I can go through just to test to see if I start lagging out or not, that I can go through. But if you are jumping on and you do have an idea of something that you'd like to tap on, given that it's EFT tapping, not psychology, I can actually help to tap on that. But I'll just wait it out a bit. This is all just a testing of the system. I know that my camera is currently trying to focus on me at the moment, which is another issue that I experience in the videos. One of the reasons I'm going live today is I actually have a bit of a day off. It's awesome. Well, awesome for myself. It's like one of my support clients are a bit unwell at the moment, so I've got the day off, so might as well jump on and test something out that I was going to test. Because the other thing is, now that I'm supporting a few clients, time availability to do separate intuitive chats and then separate EFT taps, and some of those were going for bushwalks, which I might still do today. It gets time consuming. So sometimes combining the intuitive chats and the EFT tapping into one means that I can just sit here and have split them into two, and that's just less time consuming for myself. So the other thing is, like, yeah, it's testing. It's also going to be a time effective way of me doing it, and I don't mind being live. So it's more natural that way for me for some reason. But yeah. So a little bit about EFT tapping and myself. Now that I've given my long rambling intro, EFT tapping is the emotional freedom technique. It's first started off with Dr. Roger Callahan with thought field therapy. And under thought field therapy, with the body's meridian system, there is many different points that you can access either through EFT tapping or through what it was stemming from, which was acupuncture. And Dr. Roger Callahan was working with a patient that had a water phobia, and he wanted to try something, because definitely with phobias, with fears, they tend to shut down the body. So it's hard to actually overcome something when you're actually overwhelmed by by the trauma of something that may have happened in the past. Maybe there was a past drowning incident. I don't know. But with EFT tapping, well, at that stage, fault field therapy, Dr. Roger Callahan wanted to take from other practices, like I think it was acupuncture. There was the other one that always accepts kinesiology, and of course cognitive behavioral therapy, which focuses on the cognitive mind, which unfortunately with the cognitive mind, it does tend to get impeded or shut down by these somewhat irrational responses. So Dr. Roger Callahan brought in fault field therapy to incorporate kinesiology, acupuncture, and what he was also trained in as a psychologist, cognitive behavioral therapy. He used it on Lucy, and as the story goes, I kind of doubt how quickly it worked, but as the story goes, she immediately went out and dipped her toes in the water and at least started to overcome that overwhelming fear of going into water, which was her phobia. And few whatever years later, Gary Craig was in watching. Hello, Karen. Dr. Gary Craig was watching and observing Dr. Roger Callahan's fault field therapy and decided to, I guess, standardize it into the fact of standardizing it into the points that we tap on today. And standardizing, because there are many different points within the body. So it's just not the points that I'm tapping on. And of course, I did the finger points and that. There are heaps of points. There's actually heaps in your ear. There's whole heaps of points in your ear. Like I did Shaolin Kung Fu at one stage, and we had a Shaolin monk come out and was talking about all the different points. And interestingly, if you invert the ear and look at it, it kind of looks like a baby fetus. Interesting little tidbits. But Gary Craig, of course, standardized it into points, and now we have what's called emotional freedom technique. Now, if we look at emotional freedom technique, what's the opposite of freedom? Captivity, being confined. And when we have things like stresses, when we have things like traumas, it is a confinement from not wanting to go outside, not wanting to interact with people, and also a confinement within our own bodies. We can have tension within our own bodies. We can have a narrowing. We can have a closed downness. So it's sometimes that let stress go with the flow is actually letting the stress go that is being held onto, that is creating a confinement within the body, and allowing a little bit more space and a little bit more freedom to move. So it's not so much like, oh, just go with the flow, man. Because the other thing with going with the flow, sometimes it can be said as like, stop being so resistant. Stop being so resistant to what I want. So sometimes it's more allowing the body to flow. I mean, there's that saying of how with surgery, it's kind of like a surgeon is a very expensive plumber, where they'll redirect things to actually help things. If you've had like a narrowing with your heart, with the arteries, we want to tend to open up so things can flow a little bit more easier. And that's more what I'm meaning with allowing things to go with the flow. How are you, Karen, by the way? And there is a 30-second slow mode. I can take it off if it gets annoying, but I wanted to test it out to see how it's going. And if you just joined, Karen, as well, I've also said that I'll be testing out an EFT tapping live. And if you have ideas for an EFT tapping, feel free to chuck it out. But yeah, so I'll test out. Just popping in, eh? Just in the neighborhood. Yeah, and as I was saying, it's like I've got a bit of free time for the rest of the day because unfortunately one of my support clients is unwell. So I've got an impromptu day off. So I thought I'd jump online and test out the live stream and have a bit of a ramble and also do a tapping on either something I've got listed here. Well, once again, if there's ideas that you want to, and if the 30-second delay gets annoying, let me know. But it's good to have you on board. But yeah, some of the ideas that I do have, I have. You're enjoying the info. I'm guessing about the EFT tapping. Well, I can speak a little bit more on the EFT tapping because I can probably talk to what, because how to diplomatically say it, it's kind of like EFT tapping in its essence is a stress reduction tool. And back to how I was saying about we can have stresses in our lives that impede our, like things like anxiety. It's like you want to be able to do the things that you want, but you have anxieties that get in the way. And it's not as simple as like, well, it's like if I just think positively, then I'll get what I want, because there's you can think positively, but the anxiety, or if you're confined by fear, then unfortunately the rational battle is going to be an uphill battle. So it's not that you can't think positively, it's just there's probably a lot of conditioned beliefs that are telling of the opposite. Now, EFT, we tend to tap on, like people want to always tap on the positive, and that's okay. But it's not so much positive things that are impeding ourselves from getting the positivity. There is fear that's getting in the way. So it might be a little bit more practical in the sense of reducing the things that are impeding you from getting the positivity or the goals that you want, rather than trying to put the horse before the cart. Rather than thinking of the positive, you probably want to be breaking the chains that are holding you back to get the positivity. And I think we tend to want positive things for ourselves. It's just there's impeding things that get in the way. So it's kind of like, it's not, and this is probably the part that people tend to shy away from, is then you actually have to deal with those issues. But it's only an issue as long as it remains an issue. So if you start to reduce the issue, it's no longer an issue. As I keep saying with this broken leg metaphor sort of thing, if you heal the broken leg, you no longer have to deal with the broken leg. But as long as you try and keep going forwards in life with a broken leg, it's going to go with you. So you can end EFT tapping rounds definitely on a positive note, and dealing with things where there are issues where that are quite heavy might actually intensify before they get better. So when you deal with an issue that's being very much held within the body, and this confining is also a way of trying to keep you safe. It's protecting you in a way. Once you start to deal with that, sometimes touching upon that will intensify symptoms, but it's kind of like intensifying it to actually reduce it. It's kind of like a wave. It goes up before it goes down. It gets better. It gets worse before it gets better, sort of thing. So sometimes leaning into the discomfort creates the comfort long term. And if you think of it on a long term basis, you kind of want to be focusing and achieving what you want long term. So when EFT tapping is a stress reduction tool, it's that tool to reduce the stress around the positivity, that around the limitations that is trying to is blocking you from that positivity. So think of stress as that block, that hurdle that we want to reduce, resolve, dissolve, get it out the way, so we can actually get to the positivity. Because we tend to want positive things for ourselves. It's just there's things that get in the way. So in essence, EFT tapping is tapping on the positive, but it's tapping on the things that impede the positive results. It's tapping on the negative to allow the positive. So it's kind of like you can only have two sides of things. Like if you look at something like this coffee cup sort of thing, if you're looking at it from that side and you're only focusing on that side, you're missing the detail on that side. So you kind of got to look at both sides of something for a positive thing to actually take place. So with EFT tapping, we're reducing things. We're tapping and stimulating both cognitively and also somatically. So the things that are stored in the body, that stress that is holding us back from achieving, moving forward. And also those thought beliefs, those conditioned thought beliefs that are saying, well, I'm not good enough and all that. And might be also, I feel like with the pressure increasing and propelling. Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's like, well, how does the slingshot work? You pull it back. So what's holding you back? So it's kind of like not so much focusing on that determinate, because you can get worn out trying to focus on something whilst also not moving forward. Another metaphor to use would be putting your foot on an accelerator and the brake at the same time, sort of thing. You're really revving that engine, but you're also wearing out the engine, and you're getting worn out and frustrated at yourself that you're not actually achieving. So then it becomes a negative feedback loop of like, well, I'm not doing enough, or I'm not being enough, and other people are moving forward. So you start doing that comparison thing. And even though you want something for yourself, it becomes overwhelming with that, with all the limitations of what's there, rather than changing the focus to the limitations and actually starting to address the limitations, so that you can start to take your foot off the brake and start to move forward, or start to slingshot yourself forward. But the more that you react to a reaction, it becomes a self-fulfilling loop. It'll just keep reacting, and it'll keep reacting to whatever's the reactive charge based upon past experiences within there. So if you're telling yourself that, or if you're being told that your self-belief is you're worthless, all these things, you're not deserving and all that, guess what that's going to be mixing up in that. So it's kind of like dealing with that to actually start to feel good about yourself, because it's actually hard to feel good about yourself while it's just still feeling blame and shame and all guilt about this sort of stuff. So it's another way to look at something where we do want positivity for ourselves, but it's just looking at those limitations. So it's going into that with the EFT tapping to reduce the stress around that, because it doesn't create good feelings. It creates stressful feelings around that. So this is probably where, for myself, that's where I direct the EFT tapping, rather than focusing on the end result, is focusing on what is impeding the end result. Because if we had the end result, then we wouldn't need anything in between. Similar to massage, if you're having even a relaxation massage, you might walk away with, like, even if you thought to yourself, well, I'm not stressed, I just want to treat myself, but you might walk away a little bit more looser in the muscles. So that implies that there was some tension there, even though that we're not cognitively aware of it. So there can be some unconscious stress, some unconscious things that limit us that we're not aware of. But when we go to do something, that's when it starts to rear its head. And EFT tapping deals with that amygdala. So it interrupts the amygdala and the hippocampus. So where those past memories of where we might have had those limiting beliefs told to ourselves, reacts to the amygdala, our fight, flight, freeze part of the brain, which can overwhelm the cognitive mind. So classic example is the road rage incidents, where you see someone raging at someone because they didn't do something, but it's probably not what the person did in the car. It's they aren't doing what they're supposed to do in the raging person's mind. So therefore, they become the projecting of, maybe they're late, maybe they're stopping me from getting to my job. So therefore, it's like it's threatening my survival, my livelihood. So this person must pay. But it can come to the point where, after the road rage incident, you start to get to the cool down moment, where the cognitive mind starts to come online. You might get a little bit shaking. It's like, oh crap, I could have really hurt that person, or something could have happened. It's like all the possibilities of what can happen. So that's when the cognitive mind starts to go off, and we start to just go from our animal mind, our survival mind. So EFT tapping will start to reduce the stress around our reactions to things as well. So it creates, once again, that space between the react and the respond. So it's another way that can actually make our life flourish a little bit more if we're not so much in the reactive mind. So that's a ramble. Now, I do have EFT tapping ideas. I've chucked them out there. Some of these I've thought of. Some of these are just merely ideas, and I've put no thought behind. Of course, we've just had Mother's Day and all that. And for people that have gone no contact, there can be lingering feelings around that. An idea that came up last night was about assertion. We've got that one I've already done. There's a glass half full, glass half empty one. Compassionate fatigue. That's another one. So yeah, ideas. But if there's ideas that are troubling you, are causing stress in your life, feel free to chuck it out, and I'll see what I can do. Compassionate fatigue. I thought you might say that one. All right. Yeah, so compassionate fatigue. And I think definitely in today's world, like, I don't watch the news. It's something that it's kind of like, if you want a trauma cycle, join in the news cycle, because there's a lot of stuff that can happen in the world, and there's a lot of stuff that can happen in our immediate world that we can feel powerless about, and we want to do so much, and it's very distressing to see all these things that are happening, and also happening to our own selves. And the more that we want to do, and the more things that are fed back to us of how bad things are, it becomes like your compassion, like your energy, will eventually run out one day, and you'll start to get fatigued. There's only so much caring you can do in a day. There's only so much caring for ourselves that we can do for ourselves in a day. And it's not so much about, I need to have a big heart, because I think generally most people are either sympathetic or empathetic to other people in crisis. But there are also people that do enjoy taking from that big heart, or even our own selves not knowing the boundaries between what is giving and what is taking, and also knowing that we need to be also able to have our own heart at the end of the day, our own sense of self at the end of the day, where we're not so much caught up in trying to be everything for everyone. It's merely being there for ourselves so we can be there for everyone. So knowing the difference between ourselves and others, so we don't actually start to fatigue ourselves by trying to over be for everyone, because in another sense, it's allowing the persons to be for themselves as well. So we'll do an EFT tapping on this. So EFT tapping, I'll be tapping on the points. You just follow with the points. There'll be face points, there'll be finger points. There's going to be basically, I say the words out. If you have words that you are concerning you around compassionate fatigue, put them in the chat. I'll incorporate that into the EFT tapping. So I'll do a bit of a pause before we get going. So if there's issues around compassionate fatigue that are concerning you, put them into the chat now. I'll incorporate that in, and that way it's a little bit more personalized to yourself rather than just to myself. So I'll just give it a little pause. And just for prompts, it can be how you're feeling physically within yourself, how it feels mentally within yourself, the thoughts. Okay, give a burnout. Yep. Sensations can be heaviness, can be just even just words like blur. I feel blur. It doesn't have to be an actual word. A little bit longer. So while we're waiting for that, I'll just also say now, you can also use it is a good one. And I've talked about chasing the pain technique, and that is, you get a lot of, in chasing the pain technique, it's basically one of the EFT tapping techniques, and it's one of my favorite ones. But we can have like a heaviness that sits on our chest, and we describe the sensations. It can be like a heaviness. It can be like the color is like a murky brown. It might have a heat to it. It might have a stingingness to it. These sorts of things. And sometimes some of the words are just like, blah. So we just use that as well. So yeah, we can also use a subjective unit of distress scale, with 10 being the most amount of distress that we feel around compassionate fatigue, how stressed we feel about that, and 0 being no stress at all. And we generally try to get close to 0, but once again, sometimes it will intensify before it goes down. So sometimes it is kind of like a rinse and repeat, or other things might come up. So, and I'll just give a little bit more, and I'll say now, taking full responsibility for your own well-being. And what that just means is that you're entering into something that is reducing stress, but you're just taking responsibility for that, as we take responsibility for healing. All right, I'll get going on this one, and we'll do a couple of rounds, so don't worry about it too much if you're having to. So, even though I'm feeling compassionate fatigue, I want to be everything for everyone, or at least I'm feeling that way. And I'm feeling worn out, because I feel like I'm reaching my limits. And I'm open to loving and accepting myself, even though I have all this care to give, and I'm giving and giving, and it feels like I'm running out, and it feels like I'm getting worn out, and it's definitely leaving me feeling blah. And I'm open to loving and accepting myself, even though I give and give all of this care. And I might want to remind myself that I'm here for myself, to care for myself as well. And I'm open to loving and accepting myself. All this caregiving, all this compassionate fatigue, it wears me out. I do love doing what I do. And there's many people out there that do need my support, that do need my compassion. And I give and give. And then I give a little bit more. And a little bit more might happen. That requires me to give a little bit more of myself. And the more that I give of myself, the more that I start to realize that I need some care for myself. I need a bit of recharging. I need a bit of discharging of all the stress around caring for others. I don't want to feel blah all the time. I do want a bit of wow in my life. I do want a bit of compassion for myself. And I do want to give a bit of care for myself. so I can remain in optimal health for myself and for others. So I can feel good within myself. And that can be reflected in my caring for others. All of this fatigue, it wears me out. Makes me feel blah. Makes me feel not much at all. I'm not sure if I enjoy that feeling of caring for others, but giving myself a bit of good feeling as well. I'm here for myself, caring for myself, caring for my needs, caring for my body, caring for my thoughts, and being mindful how I think of myself. I want to have caring thoughts for myself that know when enough is enough. I've reached my limit, and the autonomy of another person can learn to start to take care of themselves, rather than me being in constant care of their needs. Because I have needs as well. And I don't want to feel blah forever. Temporary moments of blah. But I do want to be here for myself, caring for myself in mind, body, and spirit. And taking a full breath in and out. And just checking in with yourself, noticing how that feeling, maybe checking in with your SUD score if you did have a SUD score. Sometimes we might feel changes within our body. Sometimes we might feel shifts or even cognitive shifts. And if that is, feel free to chuck it in the chat. It's not a requirement. We can always do another round. Use tension in the throat and chest. And that's an interesting one. Yeah. And we'll go straight into that. So just noticing that sensation of tension within the throat and the chest. Just noticing that. Let's begin to tap. Even though this compassionate fatigue, I've been doing a lot for a long time. And I have this tension within my chest and my throat. And it doesn't feel nice. And it feels like there's something to say. And I'm open to loving and accepting myself. Even though I've been doing and doing. And a lot of what I've been doing might have been against my own internal say. And merely what I had to do. And merely what I had to get through. And I'm open to loving and accepting myself. Even though of all of this fatigue and of all of this doing, I still have a voice for myself. And sometimes that's no. And I'm open to loving and accepting myself. All this tension in my throat, all this tension in my chest, all this doing and doing, all this compassion, all this distress of what I had to go through, the stress of what I have to do, of what I have to witness, and what I have to help through. And sometimes I've just got to suck it up. And I don't like sucking it up, because there are many distressing things that I do witness that don't feel good. And there's this internal voice that might be screaming out, that I might be holding in, that is saying to myself, that was really scary. That was really scary what we had to go through. And I did it out of compassion, and I did it with a good heart. But these things do affect me. I'm not a robot. I'm not on command. I do have a heart. And this heart is speaking out. And it's getting a little bit caught. All this tension. I'm noticing that tension. I'm thanking that tension for allowing me to know there are many scary things that I had to go through. And I'm honoring my body. I'm bringing awareness to it. I'm allowing it to know that I'm here for it now. I'm giving it the attention it deserves. I do care for myself. I am compassionate for myself as well. All the scariness. It was very scary. And I got through. And I do acknowledge that. As I acknowledge my compassionate heart and my ability to move through this. By acknowledging my vulnerability and embracing that. And giving myself a bit of a hug. And I'm telling myself, I did good for others. I'm going to do good for myself now. I'm allowed to be vulnerable. I'm allowed to know that some things are scary. And I don't need to keep that in. I don't need to keep that scariness in. I can allow it to go. I'm giving myself the warm hug that I deserve. I did a good job. I'm allowed to let it go now. Allowing this tension to relax. Allowing myself to know that I'm safe to allow it to relax. All of this tension. My heart and my chest. All of this tension within my throat. Allowing my voice to be heard to myself. And being kind and caring for myself. In mind, body, and spirit. And taking a full breath in again. Maybe move the body around. See how that feels within the body. Sometimes we can get a little bit stuck in our positions. And just checking in with yourself once again. Just noticing. And noticing without judgment. Take as much time as you need. And we can always do another round if needed. And if you have just joined, I'm just doing a live test of the live YouTube video, and also just doing a bit of EFT tapping to test it out. And we're just doing one on compassionate fatigue. It's normally something that happens quite a lot in the individual sessions. I would say, unfortunately, but it's probably better out than in. It's one of those things that, and I guess when I do say in some of the EFT tapping videos that the EFT tapping videos are kind of like a one way and being responsive to your own needs. And that's how an actual EFT tapping session works, is you present what you want to tap on and we just tap on that. So yeah, and when we do tap upon something that's a little bit more personal to ourselves, it kind of hits home a little bit more. So and also looking at tears as a release. It's a release of what we've been holding on to, and it can be very cathartic to cry. We can feel a little bit worn out, and we can also feel a little bit sleepy afterwards. And these are also some of the after effects of EFT tapping as well. Once again, a stress reduction tool. So, and with that massage metaphor, it's sometimes we don't know sometimes how much we've been holding on to for so long, because it just becomes the norm for us. So yeah, and once again, if you're needing a tearful release, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. And I might even just chuck in an EFT tapping for a little bit of positivity, as I was saying right at the start. It all links together. It's all connected. So if you're feeling open, even though I have this compassionate fatigue, and I think that's a good quality of myself, to be compassionate and caring, and to be caring for myself, and to also know my limits, and seeing those limits as a positive thing. And I'm open to loving and accepting myself, even though those limitations are allowing me to know when I can keep my compassion for myself and not fatigue myself by overreaching. And that's a good lesson to learn for myself, and a lesson for others as well. And I'm open to loving and accepting myself, even though my compassionate heart, my caring self, is a truly wonderful person. And I'm going to be compassionate for myself, and I'm going to be truly compassionate for others by knowing that separation and being here for myself so that I can be here for others. And I'm open to loving and accepting myself. I had a good release. I had a good cry. I'm allowing the stress to flow, and allowing my compassionate heart to heal, and allowing myself to know I'm a pretty smart cookie. I'm learning a lot about myself, a lot about my own tension patterns. There are these little signals, sometimes uncomfortable signals, that allow me to know it's time to be compassionate for myself and to give some care for myself. And whenever I feel blah, I might start to say, time to give some care for myself now. I'm at my limits. And it's time to know my limits and start to heal within them. I'm a caring person. And this person needs a bit of care. Allowing all tension to flow. Allowing myself to be vulnerable. Allowing my vulnerability to be my strength. Because it's hard to feel strong when I'm feeling fatigued. So my vulnerabilities are allowing me to know. It's time to recharge. Time to recoup. Time to recover myself so I can be there for other selves. And that's a pretty positive thing. Caring for myself, it's pretty positive. Caring for others, pretty positive as well. So I am in a win-win situation. As long as the give and take doesn't outweigh itself. I got to give a little for myself as well. Giving that care for myself. I'm feeling awesome. I've had an awesome cry. I'm feeling awesome within myself. I might need to rest, but resting is good. Rest and be at your best. Another way to look at rest and digest. Allowing myself to flow. Allowing that stress to flow. Allowing it to go. In mind, body, and spirit. And taking a full breath in. And out. Move the body around. That's the thing. It's like with our postures, how we hold ourselves is sometimes a reflection of sometimes what we've been carrying for so long, these stresses or even traumas. There is that saying of like, oh, bad things always seem to be happening to me sort of thing. And it's probably bad things have happened. It's just we're guarding ourselves in certain vulnerable position or postures that sometimes very not nice people will see that vulnerability. So it's kind of like it perpetuates itself. So when we start to feel a little bit freer in ourselves, we tend to open ourselves a little bit more and feel a little bit more confident within ourselves. So freeing of that stress and also freeing of those tensions within help to allow more freedom, both emotionally and physically. And seeing how you feel. You're allowed to feel. And it's the interesting thing with laughter is it's the same sort of muscles that you recruit for crying. So it's really the perception behind it. It's like you can have tears of laughter and tears of sadness. It's not like separate tears that we're accessing. So it's really the thought perception behind how we're actually accessing these emotions. So sometimes, and it's good to bring in humor. It makes you feel good. So it's like not everything has to be serious and doom and gloom. So, but it's also like sometimes when we have things where we've been dealing with something that's so serious in our mind, it can be we almost get bereft of our senses. And sometimes when we see the logic that we're using, it's kind of like it's almost amusing in some way. It's like I was doing that. It's kind of like looking back at yourself and like in old photos with fashion choices. It's like I was wearing that. I know so much better now, even though the fashion trend might change later down the track. So it's kind of like our perception of ourselves will change over time. It's just sometimes those emotions get us stuck in how we feel about ourselves when emotions aren't really physical things, even though they affect our physicality. It's our perception behind it, and that can change. It's the same as our perception of ourselves. I think that's also why with self-help sort of thing, it's like sometimes there's perceptions that I've had of myself, even if I've been journaling, and that I don't know is not true until I front up to a therapist or something. They sort of say, actually, the conditioned belief that you had is conditioned for a reason, to make you feel either not confident or all these things. So it becomes your own limiting belief that your self-help going these sorts of things. So sometimes it takes an outside reflection to go, well, actually, no, this is not actually how we actually are. It's just how we've been conditioned to be. So sometimes the best self-help is having someone else mirror back to you your belief systems and go, huh. Seems a bit odd. So yeah, I mean, we're coming up an hour now. I mean, a lot of what I've been doing is just rambling and testing out the live stream and that, but and tapping as well. But I guess checking in with how around compassionate fatigue, how you felt prior. Yeah, it is effective. And also with mirroring, if we just look at a physical, like an everyday mirror, and how we see ourselves and all the things that we need to change and all these sorts of things, when if we feel confident within ourselves, it's like, if I have to adapt myself or cut off parts of myself so I can get acceptance of others, it's not really going to be a true representation of myself. It's just I've had to maladapt myself to someone else, sort of thing. So, and who's to say that their preferences and changes won't change over time as well? So yeah, it is kind of like just feeling a little bit more secure within yourself, and let everyone, I guess, pick and choose whether they want to interact with that or not. But oh yeah, checking in to see how you're feeling prior to the tapping with the compassionate fatigue and how you're feeling now. I'll probably end it on the hour. Otherwise, I will go longer. I do chat. So. And thank you very much, Karen, for jumping on and allowing yourself to take part in the EFT tapping and allowing yourself to feel some emotions and allow those to flow. It's definitely been a learning experience for myself with the live streaming. I think I'll definitely remove the 30-second or whatever I put it on there. I was isolating today, feel very closed off. I feel more open now. I have a date with my goddaughter this evening, and I was dragging my feet. Really, I needed to. Yeah, and that's the thing. It is kind of like, and any reduction is better than no reduction, right? It's like even like you might get a massage and it reduces the stress, which might deal with that headache to now think a little bit more clearly. It doesn't mean that you won't get another like tense muscles. It just means that in that you're allowed to now be a little bit more free or in your thinking because you're not locked up in that headache. So it's kind of like, yeah, it is just basically those words closed off, feeling more open now. I mean, that's that duality once again, feeling closed to being open, the negativity to get to the positivity. Yeah, I hope the date with your goddaughter goes well. I'm actually dragging my feet. Like I kind of want to go for a bushwalk, but I'm also like, oh, it's my day off. It's like I can like lay in bed, but if I lay in bed, I'll probably just start feeling depressed about myself. It's like I could be going on a bushwalk. And definitely feeling unlocked. And like for myself, like when I had the really bad trauma, like symptoms, like, and I've talked about it in videos, like my body literally felt locked up. It felt like all of my muscles were like literally like tense. My breathing was just like it was just like, and they were giving me ultrasounds. They were all trying to find what organ was, and it's like trauma won't show up on an ultrasound unless there's like an actual physical trauma, but emotional trauma won't. So, and my body was getting to the point, I was like lying on a comfy bed, and I was just like, why is this bed like made of cement? It's because I felt like just basically encased in trauma, and I was just in a fear state basically. So things like EFT tapping, TRE exercises, which was a huge one, actually helped discharge that trauma, and actually start to unlock and open up and make you feel, once again, emotional freedom technique, make you feel a little bit more freer. So and definitely if we feel, once again, more freer in ourselves, the possibilities of doing more and achieving more become a lot more than if we're staying in our room with the outside world being that fear-based sort of thing. It's not so much the outside world, it's like what's not happening in here and also in the body. So definitely discharging that allows that emotional freedom and the physical freedom. Of course, there's going to be physical actual traumas as well, which, you know, do require other forms of care, but also how we our emotional responses to ourselves. If we keep telling ourselves negative beliefs about ourselves, and we're just naturally going to believe that because we know no different. It's like speaking a language. I don't know how to speak French, so me going to a French country doesn't actually, like, I won't be able to speak their lingo until I actually learn to speak their lingo. So it's kind of like learning how to treat ourselves with compassion, especially if you're being brought up in an environment that conditions you with that self-negative language sort of thing. So it's learning to teach ourselves a little bit more, which does take time, effort, and practice to do. So sometimes we're, instead of like, I should be doing this, and it's like, well, should is very much a demanding. It's like, you should be able to do this. It's like, well, I can't get it right the first time. And if I have been trying to get it right first time, it's more probably the repercussions around that I'm fearing if I don't get it right the first time. So that might have been the discipline, the punishment around if I'm not perfect first time. So unpacking it a little bit starts to, one of my therapists is to make sure. And that's the thing. It's like, it's kind of like anything that you push against will just offer a resistance, because you can't push if there's no resistance. So it's kind of like, the more that you push at yourself, the more that you demand of yourself, the more that you should of yourself, rather than teaching yourself, then it becomes like that stern teacher. You should be able to do your master. You should be able to clean your room. You should be doing all these things, rather than someone actually helping you to learn. Because you can't learn through punishment. All that you learn is to fear the repercussions of not doing what is not being taught. So it's kind of like me, I should be able to drive a fusion reactor. It's like, why? I haven't been taught to do that sort of thing. And it's like, many of our beliefs are because we're not doing what is expected without actually being taught how to do X, Y, and Z. So it's kind of like, but unfortunately that becomes our own belief system. So we start to punish ourselves over something that either we haven't gotten right first time, or that we're not actually, oh, was that, I can do things. Oh my God. It was very, very explosive. I have no idea what that was. See if I can do it again. No? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Let's see if I can really time this. It's like teaching yourself to learn without actually being taught. So it's the teacher in itself is an ineffective teacher, because they're only invested in teaching in punishment, rather than teaching the pupil to learn. So seeing yourself as the person that you want to follow, as discipline means discipulus, a pupil, we want to be teaching ourselves a new way to speak about ourselves. And when we start to do that, then the should becomes rather I want to be able to learn. Because when we start to learn, we start to cultivate beliefs and we start to feel really good about ourselves, which is really good. Okay, and we've got our first spammer. Cool. So yeah, it's one of those things where, yeah, it's learning to teach ourselves more ways of teaching ourselves to be more confident within ourselves. Yeah, it was well timed. So yeah, it's turning the should into basically being able to teach ourselves new beliefs about ourselves, being able to speak to ourselves in a new way. So yeah, but we've hit the hour. So yeah, I might do a little bit more lives coming up, and I'll rework it, and also try and get a little bit more of a schedule. It's going to be hard. I do have a little bit of spaces here and there during my week that I can fit things in. So, but yeah, I might go for a walk and enjoy that. So thank you very much, Karen, for taking part in this. Mr. Clean, it's like, come on, do a bit better. It's actually a good thing to be Mr. Clean. Clean up the dirty acts of people. Oh, I do. Oh, cool. I appreciate this today. I'm glad I found you. Yeah, cool. No worries. Thank you, Karen. I hope you have a very good time. And I'm getting some great advice that I'll choose not to follow, because who needs destructive criticism when you've got the best criticism in the world? You're looking at it right here. So yeah, I'll do a little bit more lives coming up, and if I get a schedule, then I'll schedule it in. So until next time, be your awesome selves. I'll go do a walk because I'll probably be bored for the rest of the week. So I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you very much, Karen. Bye for now.